Okay, this is a bee tree that I first discovered around the springtime of last year, which is 2025. The reason I started doing this is because I wanted to see if it's possible for a honeybee colony to thrive living wild in a tree nowadays. So we used to have these black bees called Apis mellifera mellifera that lived in the United States until the varroa mite came. It was here when the settlers came, and they called it the native bee. But when the varroa mites came in the 1990s, anyone who didn't treat their hives lost them, and the ones in the woods, they died out. And nobody was keeping black bees, or Apis mellifera mellifera. They were keeping mostly Italians, some Carniolans, and some Caucasians. Apis mellifera carnica, Apis mellifera lingustica, and Apis mellifera caucasia. They were not keeping Apis mellifera mellifera because the bee companies, when they brought Apis mellifera lingustica in 1857, told everyone that the so-called native bee, is what they called him back then, was unthrifty, aggressive, not a good honey producer, and not worth keeping. The reason they did that is because when they imported the Apis lingustica, which is the honeybee with a little more yellow stripes on it, they imported it because it produces large colonies of bees all year long. And the bee companies wanted to sell bee colonies, not honey. And so they wanted to sell queens and bee colonies early in the year for new beekeepers to purchase. In order to do that, they had to tell them that the bees that were already wild were no good. And in 1857, they were just learning how to use movable frame hives, and almost everyone was using what they called bee gums, hollow logs sawed out. This is a tree that is hollow inside. This tree right here is known as a hackberry tree. It has very light wood, and it is related to the mulberry family. And it has, which is also in the same family as figs, Moraceae, whatever. Anyhow, these beautiful, fig is actually ficus, but they're all in the Moraceae family. Mulberry and figs are very closely related. A lot of that is very interesting, but I'm not going to get into that yet. They can produce fruit without being pollinated, the mulberries can, but they can't produce seeds without being pollinated, viable seeds. And the figs are the same way. Some of them can produce fruit without being pollinated, but they can't produce viable seeds. So these kinds of plants we reproduce by taking cuttings and rooting them or using tissue culture. But anyhow, back to the bees. They told us that these bees were no good, that were already here. So they imported in 1857 a bunch of these yellowish Italian bees, Apis lingustica, because they produce brood continuously in large quantities, which is what a bee company would need to sell bees. And they come from a subtropical region of southern Italy. That's why they're yellow, because the color yellow reflects heat, and they live in a very hot climate. And they're also all over North Africa because the Romans did a lot of moving around and sailing, and beeswax was how we lit the world back then. We illuminated the world with candles made from beeswax. So bees were traded in skeps. And the Romans in the tip of Italy in Rome spread them around all the coastlines, carrying live skeps here and there. So the Italian was widespread, but it didn't make it well in North Europe. That's the reason that our bees are darker up there. Anyway, the only real difference in honeybees is the coloration. Really, when it gets down to it, the main thing you're going to notice is the coloration. Dark bees absorb heat and do very, very well in a cool climate. But anyway, you see how these bees are all outside the tree, they are hot because the temperature is in the 90s. Bees prefer, as you can see here, they chose this spot on their own. They prefer shade to full sun. These bees are healthy. They've been here since, like I said, the spring of 2025. African small hive beetles have not taken over the colony. Waxworms have not started scavenging on any lost comb. It seems to be very healthy so far. So it has no treatment, no honey has been taken, no pollen, no combs. There's been no interference by me whatsoever. The colony is about 15 feet above the ground level and in deep shade, which is perfect for it. It stays cooler this way. I have been trying to monitor this to make sure that treatment is necessary. If these bees continue to survive this way, being left completely alone, and also being able to feed from my feeders and stuff if they need it, they don't need anything, there should be no reason for them to die except for the fact that they have a mite problem. But so far there isn't any problem. So this is really scientific for me. I've been monitoring this hive ever since it started. So we're going on August 5th, Wednesday, 2026. And I first discovered this hive in 2025, early spring. So here we are. Now I do check this tree. I knew this tree didn't have any bees in it because there was a woodpecker that made this nest the year before. And see, a male woodpecker does all the work making the nests. It's very hard. It has to chip into a tree that's already hollow in the middle. And the female woodpecker does nothing to help. While the male is building all these nests, she'll come and inspect each one of these little cavity nests that he's made and give it the judgment, whether she likes it or not. If she doesn't like it, he goes off and builds another one. She sticks her head in that one after he's finished and checks it out and usually makes a lot of noises to see how the echo is in there. Then she'll keep on going until she finds one she likes. The leftover cavities that the male woodpecker makes are utilized by all kinds of cavity nesting songbirds and of course honeybees, wasps, sometimes tree frogs if they start holding water inside of them, and tree frogs can actually put tadpoles in them, which eat mosquitoes and mosquito larvae and eggs and algae and things like that. Infusoria and stuff. But anyway, this right here is still alive, this hive, and still doing very, very well with no input from the beekeeper. It's totally on its own. And it has been 1 full year, so we're doing pretty good. After the woodpecker makes several nests, the female finally goes and lays eggs in it. But during this time, while the male woodpecker was busy making all of these nests, she was out finding boyfriends that want to spend time with her. And so in most birds, the babies that hatch are not really the fathers. So Maury Povich would really have a thing with these birds on his show. He would be telling all these poor nest builders, you are not the father. But we don't want to tell them that because the deadbeats that are the father aren't building the nests, aren't feeding the young. Now, after the woodpecker finishes making the final nest that the female enjoys and wants to lay in, he continues to feed her and help her find bugs and repair the nest, things like that. Meanwhile, the nice daddy that the mommy liked, that ran around and gave her all the attention that she wanted while the other daddy was building the nest, is out, disappeared. She stopped seeing him because she spends so much time sitting on the eggs for a month. By the time the eggs hatch, he's long gone. That's how it works in nature. with the birds and the bees. Hope you're having a wonderful late summer. August 5th update, Wednesday, 2026. Wild bee tree survival experiment.